To Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Bob Dancer is America's premier video poker writer and teacher. He's written 10 books, including Video Poker for the Intelligent Beginner and the best-selling $1 Million Video Poker. He helped develop the computer software Video Poker for Winners, and in 2004 he was inducted into the Video Poker Hall of Fame. Richard Munchkin has been a professional advantage player for over 30 years and is in the Blackjack Hall of Fame. His book, Gambling Wizards, Conversations with the World's Greatest Gamblers, is a testament to the many ways you can succeed at gambling. The goal of the show is that you'll be a more knowledgeable gambler tomorrow than you were yesterday. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good evening. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. My name is Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest tonight runs neck and neck with Arnold Snyder as our most popular frequent guest, attorney Bob Nersesian. Bob Nersesian has successfully represented players against casinos in a variety of areas. We'll be speaking to Bob shortly. The Revel continues to be the storyline at the top of our program. As you know, they have a 100% loss rebate program of all the money you lose in July on slots, video poker, and electronic table games, up to a maximum of $100,000. You receive the rebate in the form of 20 equal weekly free play amounts beginning in early August and extending through mid-December. They removed all the $25 video poker machines a few days before the promotion started on July 1st. There have been stories on VP Free, Wizard of Vegas, and other player sites, where players are being kicked out right and left for no reason at all, and players have been allowed to lose money and then told they're not getting a rebate. I have a friend close to casino management there, and he spoke to me off the record. That means I can't reveal his name or exactly how close he is to Revel Casino Management. Perhaps he'll allow me to do this in the future, but not now. Some of you youngsters may not get the reference, but I'll call my friend Deep Throat. Deep Throat told me yesterday that there have been two categories of players who haven't been allowed to play, and both categories represent a very small number of players. He did not define what he meant by a small number. First are what Revel calls known advantage players who had their cards deactivated prior to the start of the promotion. I asked him what it took to be on that list, and Deep Throat wouldn't tell me. He told me these players weren't kicked out of the casino, but could not play in this promotion. I told him that there were reports that players played first and then were told they were on the list and not eligible to play. Deep Throat told me this never happened. If your card was not deactivated prior to the promotion starting, you're not on their list, according to Deep Throat. The second category of players who were kicked out were those caught trying to make it appear they lost more money than they actually did. I asked if he was referring to card pulling, and he told me yes, but there may be other techniques used instead. In this week's column on LasVegasAdvisor.com, I indicated how one might do that on Ultimate X. I suspect Ultimate X was the vehicle of choice when players did this. He says they have surveillance tapes on the activities of every player removed for the promotion from this, and then manipulating your score is clearly prohibited in the rules. Deep Throat told me that other than these two small groups of players, everybody else has been allowed to play unrestricted and will continue to be allowed to play as long as they're doing it within the rules. For the players who go about yelling that they have been restricted for no cause, instead of taking your case to the player sites, take your case to the mainstream media, such as New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, CBS News, etc., or hire a lawyer. These organizations and attorneys will likely contact the casino, who will respond. So far, little of this has happened that we know of, likely because the players removed are not telling the complete story. If I lived in Atlantic City, closer to it, I would certainly be playing the highest denomination slot machine I could get a seat on. and pound away until I got a killer jackpot or lost 100,000. I know of no other promotion where I have anywhere near this kind of edge. For $5 video poker, the possibility of losing 100,000 in 1 month is so remote that the promotion is not worth that much. For dollar and lower players, it's worth even less. Now, Munch, what's your take on all this?
Well, first of all, I'm wondering if you asked Deep Throat if you would be allowed to play if you were back east, or whether you're on, quote unquote, the list.
I did not ask him that. I assumed I would be allowed, but I did not ask. If I were going to play, I would definitely ask first.
So, you mentioned that the players are saying these things on player sites. So obviously they're preaching to the choir, and people tend to exaggerate or sometimes out and out fabricate things to try to make their case sound better. But I would also say the casino does exactly the same thing. So this Deep Throat, whoever he is, it's in his best interest to make it sound as good as it can from his point of view.
Fair point.
I have received many emails about this over the course of it going on. I have had more than a few reports that said players were stopped after playing, some of them winning and some of them losing. And the ones that were losing were told they were not eligible for the rebate after they had lost money. And these are people who were not doing any kind of crazy thing, on video, any kind of shenanigans. Now, I also want to mention that I got an email from someone who plays an awful lot of video poker and is very good at math. And he said that on this game,
Ultimate
it
X?
would take an hour to generate an extra loss by pulling your card. So
how much of an extra loss in an hour?
A $1,000 extra loss. So, in other words, if you had lost $10,000 in an hour by using this card pulling technique on Ultimate X, it would boost your loss up to 11,000. So I just think so there are two groups of people. The groups of people who do that are just idiots. I mean, how big an edge do you want? 100% loss rebate, and you're going to go do this kind of stupidity that's going to get you thrown out, and you really have no case as far as I'm concerned if you're doing that stuff. You have no leg to stand on. But I mean, and again, just an example, you think you would be allowed to play.
Yes.
But I've never had a card at Revel, so there's no way that my card can already be deactivated. But I'd be willing to make another bet if it was large enough so that I could recoup my expenses and stuff, that if I were to go to Revel and get a card and start playing, I bet that I would get deactivated, as would somebody like Tommy Highland or James Grosjean, anybody with a very high profile name or someone that's been in Griffin a long time. There's no way you're going to convince me that they would just allow us to play. And they can't deactivate my card because I've never had one before. So unless they caught me between the Players Club booth and the machine, I just think, that I would get backed off at some point.
Okay. Bob Nersesian, not about the Revel specifically, but when players first come to you complaining about what a casino did or did not do to you, do you find the story presented by the player is usually accurate or usually not very accurate?
Very rarely do I find it inaccurate, but there's a reason for that. They're talking to their lawyer. They aren't going to hide anything. And if I catch them hiding anything, or I suspect that they're hiding anything, we quickly ferret that out, and the true story is out front. One of the weird things that happens is oftentimes people who are playing perfectly legal and by an advantage will talk to me and try and make their situation seem less invasive than it actually is, when what they're doing is exactly what I want to go in on. And so, don't hide it, but they try to hide it sometimes. As a general rule, most people are very frank with me.
Have you?
Hi, Richard.
Well, actually, before we get into that, I want to ask you, Bob, because
But there's two
you
Bobs
mentioned
here.
this guy is close with the Revel management, and certainly the rumors are flying around the internet as they always do. I've had people asking me, "Is Bob consulting with the Revel on this promotion?"
Ah, I didn't know which Bob you were talking about,
No,
but I just figured it out. Good. Several players have suggested as much, and several players suggested that everything wrong with this particular promotion is all my fault. I'm actually used to living in that world. In actuality, I have no consulting role with the Revel at all. In late June, after the promotion was announced with a big splash, but before it actually started on July 1st, I called up Deep Throat, friend to friend, and suggested the casino was making a huge mistake that could well cause the Revel to go into bankruptcy again.
Now, why would you do that?
Friend to friend.
Yeah. Okay.
I did not think a casino going bankrupt was to anybody's interest. I certainly did not think it was to the players' interest. Deep Throat laughed, told me the promotion was well thought out and that they were prepared to go through with it. A few days ago, earlier this week, he sent me an email asking whether I still thought they were about to go bankrupt. In my response, I asked him about the stuff being bandied about on the internet, about players being kicked out and are cheated, and asked if somebody on the Revel management team would come on the air and talk about this. We sent it up to a 5-minute phone call where he and I chatted, and what he said basically is what I reported earlier in the discussion today. The same group, the Fine Point group, ran the Greektown Casino a few years ago. At that time, I asked them if they thought they could use a video poker consultant. They declined at that time. Down the road, I would actually like to teach video poker classes at the Revel if they ever bring back good games. It's certainly going to be after mid-December, if at all. It's a great property, and I'd love to be associated with them. But as of this time, I do not see a consulting relationship with them. It could happen, I guess, but it hasn't happened yet, and there's no clear path leading in that direction.
So, now, Bob Nersesian, have you been approached about cases regarding this promotion?
Absolutely. Phone's been ringing off the hook. I'm not a New Jersey lawyer. I do know that there are some lawyers interested in it, and I may have a consulting role when something goes forward. And Deep Throat notwithstanding, I think that Revel may have some real issues with excluding people from services offered to the public in New Jersey, specifically referencing the Houston case that I think most of the gamblers are familiar with. And, it's not just casinos, and it's not just blackjack, and it's not just gaming. The rule in New Jersey is absent good cause, and good cause being the person is disruptive, the person is disorderly, the person smells bad, the person has a historic reputation that will reflect poorly on the property. Whatever the business is in New Jersey, if you're offering a service or offering goods, the people in New Jersey or people just visiting New Jersey have a legal right to access what's being offered, and if it's denied, they have a civil cause of action. So I don't know how Revel, card pulling they can put in their rules, but I'm familiar with the Ultimate X idea, I believe, and I don't see anything illegal or inappropriate about that personally, and I think that or other things, or just advantage players playing the way Bob said, which is run like crazy, hope you hit that big one in the meantime. It's like a free roll, and then if you do, great. If you don't, you're still back to where you are. Those people who are being excluded from this play may well find themselves called plaintiffs, and the statement of, I don't particularly want to see a casino go bankrupt, might be prescient even in the negative here.
So let's say somebody did have a case. and they wanted to file it, do they do the Casino Gaming Commission, the Division of Gaming Enforcement? What would they do? What can they do and what they could not do if they feel they have a case against the Revel or anyone else?
Well, this is a promotion which is not a wager, and promotions generally are governed straight up by the common law. New Jersey's not the same as Nevada. You can there is no remedy for the player in front of the Casino Control Commission or the Department of Gaming Enforcement. So what happens in New Jersey is they can fine and stuff like that, but any remedy you have is relegated to the courts. There's one more little hurdle there. Sometimes you may have to go and make your complaint and have the DGE rule before you have the ability to bring the lawsuit, but the lawsuit is where you seek and gain anything to which you're entitled under the law from a casino. Again, these being promotions, I don't think any of that applies, and you go straight to court.
So you don't go to the DGE, you don't go to the Casino Gaming Control.
As I understand it, the DGE in New Jersey is regulating gaming. This is not gaming. This is a promotion. Mississippi and Nevada are the two states that have enacted the exclusive jurisdiction for patron remedies moving through their gaming administrative agency, Nevada Gaming Control Board here. And New Jersey doesn't provide for patron remedies.
Interesting.
You know, I wanted to touch on something else that you said, Bob, Bob Dancer.
This
is sort of a pet peeve of mine. You mentioned that the players, if they have these problems, should, rather than going to these blackjack forums or whatever, go to the media. Mm-hmm. And one of my pet peeves is that players are so bad at using the media in these kind of situations. Because I think that would make such a huge difference if this kind of article appeared in the New York Times or on the, Channel 4 News or whatever. And just as an example, back in the 80s, they were going to change the computer laws in New Jersey. And, a well-known player who's been on the show basically found, our politicians are for sale really cheaply. And for $5,000, you get access to senators and congressmen. And they prevented the computer laws changing in Atlantic City for quite some time for really not much money. Just with a little bit of lobbying, going to some of those political fundraising dinners at $2,500 a plate and talking to their congressmen, they were able to stall that bill for quite a long time, and it certainly was money well spent. So players should keep that in mind about, getting access to the media and to the politicians.
So get it in the papers and bribe politicians.
Well, it's legal bribery. You go to their fundraisers and things.
Richard, if I might, the papers are not an easy course when it comes to casinos. There's not a whole lot of, and I'm at a loss as to this. I don't understand why it isn't sexy to deal with stuff that deal with casinos. You would think it would be the way mainstream media works. But an example I would use that many of us are familiar with is when the Venetian got caught outright fixing a drawing some years back, might even be like a decade, where the guy who was doing the drawing was palming the ticket. Recall that one?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, you guys recall it because you saw it in the RJ, the local paper here, or the Sun, or you saw it on the websites you go to. That is, and they were fined, I believe, 7 figures for doing that too when they got caught. I don't recall seeing that on the national news. I don't recall the media picking up on that the way you would think that they should when another major corporation in this country might get fined that kind of money for that kind of activity or caught doing something like that. The media seems to take the same way the rest of the world does. Gaming is local, gaming is narrow, or perhaps what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
But
you can't get the media out on these things.
Pressure enough? I mean, or like if I were back there in Atlantic City The local New Jersey papers, they don't want to hurt the industry there in New Jersey, but the Philadelphia, would rather have the players come into Philadelphia.
Yeah,
so
but doesn't this show up on page B9 below the fold
saying,
rather than
don't go
A1?
to New Jersey. Look what they're doing.
Okay.
Actually, Bob Nersesian, and for our audience, Richard is calling in on Skype, and so he did not hear your comment. So the fact that he ignored it is because he didn't hear it. So if you wanted
he didn't like me.
So if you wanted to ask it again, he would likely respond to that.
Well, Richard, even if you get what you're talking about, doesn't it show up on page B17 below the fold and not page 1A?
Maybe, but publicists aren't that expensive, and publicists can get better coverage than just a guy calling the newspaper.
Shame on the newspaper.
Somebody on VP Free posted today, somebody I respect, indicated that going to the newspaper might not nearly be as valuable as threatening to go to the newspaper, because once you're in the newspaper, you've lost all leverage. But so your big gains in these things is frequently settlements, not actual damages. And so once you actually go to the paper.
A brief story, when we were playing in Seoul, they barred one of our Japanese big players, and he threatened to go to the newspapers in Tokyo and to the news in Tokyo. He got very irate and said he had a lot of friends there, and, they would never get another Japanese player. And they actually unbarred him on the spot and allowed him to keep playing, but they just lowered the maximum bet from 3,000 to 1,000. So yeah, sometimes just the threat of the media can have a big effect.
Interesting. We actually haven't officially introduced Bob Nersesian. We've spoken to him, but we haven't introduced him. Bob Nersesian is an attorney. He's won.
I think you did do this.
We actually introduced you at the start, but we always say, Bob Nersesian, welcome to Gambling with an Edge, and we haven't done that.
Well, with 6 minutes left, I thank you for that, Bob.
No, there's actually, you got to stick around for 36 minutes or something. You're not near done with us yet.
Oh, that's right. This is an hour. I'll be darned.
Did you have an appointment?
No.
Good.
And,
all right.
And you're exciting, so I'm awake for the first time today.
All right. So let's change subject off of Revel. I had a problem that affects me personally, but certain other people have had similar problems. I know Munch has had something kind of like this in the past. I was on a gambling trip recently. Somebody, I'll call him Tom for now, told me about an $800 an hour promotion. It was out of state. It was an 8-hour promotion from 4 p.m. to midnight somewhere on the East Coast early in June. I agreed to pay Tom a finder's fee and part of the revenue should we come out ahead. Part of the revenue was based on a new member bonus. When we quit playing, we went back to Tom's room and to count the money. And I had video poker tickets in various pockets. And I counted out the money I started with, and I had $4,800 left over. So we wrote that down, and I kept that. And Tom would get his split out of the mailer money, which we expected to be over $5,000. Anyway, I got back into my own hotel room, and I discovered another ticket of $2,500 in a pocket that I hadn't checked or I'd missed or something. So that should have been part of the spoils. I called him up immediately and told him we could either stop by the casino in the morning to cash the ticket, or he could buy it off me and could take it to the casino himself later. I'd keep $2,200, and the $300 would be approximately his share of the deal. And we'd keep using the $4,800 that we early had written down as our calculations as to how much we should share. Fine. Next morning, we didn't go to the casino. We stopped by another casino. He took me to the airport. I gave him the ticket, and all of a sudden, he didn't have $2,200 on him. He said he'd mail it to me. That was over a month ago. I've gotten texts from him saying a certified letter holding the money has arrived in Las Vegas. Somehow hasn't made it to my post office box yet. Never happened. Got another text saying he sent money via Western Union and included a routing number. That never happened either. I consider the guy to be untrustworthy, to say the least. I told him we were going to be talking about this on the air tonight. If he didn't want his name mentioned, he better send me a significant portion of what he owed by Western Union. This morning, I did receive $175, which is a kind of small part of it, but it's a step in the right direction. I know at least one other guy Tom has ripped off big time, and I've heard of another. Now, if he continues to make $200 or so weekly payments, I'm not planning on mentioning his name publicly. I'll just eventually get what's coming to me and just write him off and let him go about his way. But let's say he fails to make payment. Do I have a right to mention his name on the air? Do I have a right to write in my blog what he did? And this is his name, and this is how you spell it, and this is where he lives. And if you know better, you better stay away from him. Is that a legal thing to do? Or is that am I getting in trouble by doing that?
Oh, this is a question for me.
This is a question for you.
Oh, so you're taking me back to the law of defamation, which when I deal with it by pantomime, not actual words. Defamation by pantomime is like when security throws you to the floor, you're telling everybody who sees that the guy I threw to the floor is a criminal, and we sue security officers for doing that kind of stuff because the guy isn't a criminal. The short answer to your question is, well, no, there is no short answer, but let me point this out. At all times, you have an absolute right to say his name out loud and to shout it from the rooftops. That's your right. That's the First Amendment. But just by exercising a right does not mean you have not committed a tort or an action for which you can be sued. You can exercise rights and get sued all the time, okay? And you may lose. The law of defamation is that nobody can put a prior restraint on what you're saying, but that doesn't mean that a subsequent restraint through punishment is foreclosed. So, yes, you have a right to say it. So what you're really asking is, what is defamation and what is my risk? Defamation is telling falsehoods about other people. If you stick to the truth in an existential way, you cannot have committed a tort and you would not be liable. So let's take us to the real world. He said I was a crook. I'm not a crook. I'm suing him for defamation. At that point, you're going, but you did say this. And he's saying, or you did do this. And he's saying, no, I didn't. Now you've bought yourself a lawsuit. And a judge or a jury at the end of the road is going to say, who's telling the truth, Bob or Tom? It's not Tom Deep Throat. It's just Tom, right?
It's not Tom Deep Throat. He and Tom was very helpful in that he sent me several emails with this information in it and text, which I do have.
Well,
so that kind of wouldn't help his case.
No, pretty much anything you say that you can ascribe the actual words to a third person, and then you repeat the words and say so-and-so said it, that's pretty well protected as long as you have the evidence. But it's the same old story. You can be right and be in jail, okay?
Okay.
That happens all the time to gamblers who find themselves rousted or backroomed or even having charges fabricated against them by casinos as cover for the illegal detention, and they're still in jail. I can't tell you how often I get the following question in the oblique from prospective clients or just people I'm advising. If I do this, is it legal? Okay?
Uh-huh.
And the answer is oftentimes absolutely, but don't do that. Why not? Because you're going to jail. How can I go to jail if it's legal? Because legal doesn't mean you don't go to jail. Legal means you don't get convicted. Okay? So can you say it? Yes. Should you say it? That's your own moral judgment. Does this guy deserve that I think the word's oblique. I can't even say the word. I read it.
Public scorn.
Yes.
So, wouldn't another option be then, Bob, if you have evidence of all
Can
of
you either
this,
say
couldn't you
Dancer
just,
or Nersesian?
sue him in small claims and get a judgment against him?
That's
Well,
an option.
That is an option, and there's a craps case in Nevada that says that splitting you cannot collect a gambling debt from a non-casino in Nevada. It's illegal. Or there's a statute that says gambling debts cannot be recovered. That is not a gambling debt according to this craps case, where sharing winnings is not gambling. A gambling debt is incurred in playing the game, not what you do with the money after you win the game. That's the so yes, you could sue them in small claims. I sometimes sit as a small claims judge. It'd be fun to hear this, but if you came in, Bob,
Maybe you could go on Judge Judy, Bob.
Actually, I
That's an
misstated.
idea.
I used to sit as a small claims judge. Now I sometimes sit as a small claims referee. Different. I don't want to misstate that on the air here, but if Bob did come in, I would have to do what is called recuse myself. So you couldn't look for any help from me, and I never get to hear this case. Darn.
So wait, can we turn this around a minute on this subject of defamation? So what you're saying then is if OSN or Griffin has you listed as a cheat and you are not a cheat or have never been a cheat, then you can sue them for defamation, right?
That's what Grosjean did with Griffin.
Okay.
And he won.
Yes.
And he basically bankrupted Griffin.
Here's the problem with lawyers.
You were rather involved in that.
I was his lawyer. And you sit there and say Grosjean and Russo won. And you're absolutely right. The problem with us arrogant farts is that I sit there and say, I won.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I didn't. They did. But yes, that's pretty much what happened. But the facts in that one, well, if you look at the history, and I'm bragging a little bit here, one of the things that kept coming up as we were going in and things like that is Griffin sitting there going, we've been sued 18 times for this kind of thing. We've never lost. You're going to be brushed away like a fly or that kind of thing. And they weren't able to do that because we caught them cold. They said that these people were cheaters, and they weren't.
Huh. So have you had a case like this against OSN?
Oregon Surveillance Network.
I know. Oh, you're telling the.
I'm
know
telling
what
the.
OSN is.
Oh, I know you do, but some of our audience doesn't know what OSN is.
OSN is generally very careful about not using the word cheater or ascribing criminal activity to anyone. I've seen some of their flyers, etc., and while they're not perfect at it, they're much more objective than other services might be about what they report. But because of their objectivity and because of the narrowness of what they report, I would suggest that a lot of casinos are not finding them particularly helpful.
Well,
Don't know
more
one way or
people are
another.
getting heat in casinos due to OSN these days than Griffin. At least out in the rest of the country, not so much in Vegas, but in the rest of the country, especially in the Indian casinos, OSN seems to be the one.
I understand that, and I also understand that OSN is coveted by the Indian casinos, and this is rumor, and I'm repeating rumor, and you really shouldn't do that, but I think that they're supporting and fostering it as well from what I've heard. But I can't think of more than one time where I've seen that they've actually come out and said somebody was a cheater in OSN.
So if a player had an OSN entry that says he's a cheater and he's not, you'd be interested in that as a case?
Not necessarily. I mean, it may well be a good case, but I'm not terribly seeking out new clients on a daily basis, Richard. But the example you give there is exactly what Bob should be worried about, with what he's talking about, is just merely saying derogatory things can bring the wrath of the courts down upon your head. We just had that. I don't want to talk out of school, but wasn't there? Well, there was a big Steve Wynn defamation case recently that just went through everything, and Mr. Wynn won, and the other guy sat there throughout the entire thing saying, "No, it's true," and Mr. Wynn going, "No, it's false." And somebody has to make that decision, and unless you got the stuff to back up what you're saying, even if it's true, you can really suck up on a defamation suit.
Well, I do have text. I do have emails.
Okay.
I plan to save them carefully.
Can I just, I probably know more circles in this industry than most people, and there are names that have come through my office, and certainly your friend or ex-friend or ex-associate Tom is getting quickly known throughout the industry, and it won't be long before he can't find anybody to play with.
I haven't identified him yet.
What would your advice
Other
be
people
to
are.
players where somebody steals from them? What would your advice be to them?
Oh, don't put me in this position.
Okay.
I'm old school, personally, which should tell you what my personal opinion might be.
Vinny Boom Bots would go visit him?
No, Bob would go visit him. Meaning, not Dancer, me. Maybe Bob would come with me, but that's not advice.
I've never been a bodyguard before.
I'm not looking for a bodyguard. I'm looking for muscle. Difference.
Never been asked for that either.
Yeah, but that's not my advice. What is the advice? Depending on how personal it is, I truly can be the way I just said. But generally, I tell people who need to know and take it on the chin and chalk it up to lesson learned, because there'll never be a screw me twice.
With that person.
Right.
Munchkin, a year or so ago, you told a story on the air where some friends of yours had a blackjack buddy who stole $40,000 or something.
Yeah, actually, it's a good story for people to realize what not to do. A guy on the team stole $40,000. The teammates basically, took the guy to a hotel room and wouldn't let him leave, and said, "Look, we think you stole this money, and we're not leaving here until you, say you're going to give it back." And basically, the guy eventually agreed, "Yes, I did take the money. All right, I don't have all of it, but I'll go get it and I'll bring it back here." And as soon as they let him go, he went directly to the police and said he'd been kidnapped. And, my friends ended up getting arrested, and they ended up pleading to a much lesser charge than kidnapping, which, thank God, kidnapping is a huge, huge felony. And they ended up doing a few days in jail over it. So that's something you don't want to do to try to collect your money.
And I wasn't making that again, I wasn't advising of that. And the other
Oh,
thing,
no, I know that.
No,
yeah.
The other thing I want to point out is my reaction, as even stated, would never have expected collecting the money. Okay? That was just plain revenge. I don't think that method for collecting the money gets the money back. All it does is create more havoc. Can you sue them? Actually, you could, but gosh darn, it's
a tough case.
Yeah.
Let's change the subject. Last time you were on the air, you told us you were writing this book. It was going to be the end-all to gambling books, or gambling law books. Now, is that still in the works?
Actually, 3 chapters are with the publisher.
Uh-huh.
And
out of how many?
Probably about 11. And most of the 11 are written as well. I'm still just tweaking. This publisher has as I understand it, a pretty thorough editor. And can I tell you who it is, or does that matter?
By all means.
It's Anthony and Huntington Press.
Yes, we know Anthony Curtis well on this show.
Right. He's been on it, right?
Yes, more than once.
Okay. And I'm pretty hot over it. He seems pretty hot over it, and it's working away. It's a lot different from my last one. In fact, you'd be hard pressed to call them analogous. This is more of an academic book, if you will. I think I'm up to EndNote 500.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's well documented and supported. Some of the chapters you might find interesting. This one is a list of the various ways of playing and whether or not it is cheating, on the edge, or legal. Okay. And I know a lot of the listeners might appreciate that. Another chapter is the right to play, when they can and can put you out. This is not Nevada specific either. It deals with all the various jurisdictions, save for the Indian stuff because, actually there's a chapter called Indian Casinos OMG WTF. Okay. So that explains what the law is regarding them. Can I say that on the air, by the way?
Well, Lawrence did not reach for the beeper. So I think you're okay.
Okay.
If you want to say it again, though.
As long as you just say the letters.
I never thought.
Maybe Lawrence can't spell. I don't know, but he didn't reach for the cutoff thing, so I think we're okay.
Now, regarding the what you said about what's legal and what's not, we got an email this week from a listener who asks, is it legal to use a wheelchair to try to spot a hole card? Even though I just personally want to say I think it's a really dumb idea, but is it legal?
Okay. Well, now I have to add another section to this chapter called using a wheelchair to get a hole card.
So we're up to 12 now?
Well, no, that's just one section of the chapter on what's legal and what's not. But, you hear me hesitating because I've actually pondered that. And my thought on it is you better have a doctor's note. I'm not saying that tongue-in-cheek either. If you're just cruising around in a wheelchair, there ain't a judge in this world who isn't going to think that you're the biggest scum on earth, and they're going to find something to put you away. Do you disagree?
But if you were legitimately in a wheelchair, then it would be okay.
Yeah, that's why I said you better have a doctor's note. So that's my answer. And there's a saying about Wall Street that bears make money, bulls make money, pigs get slaughtered. Well, the same holds true for gambling, and the guy who's faking it and running around in a wheelchair is a pig.
Yeah.
Rolling around in a wheelchair is what you meant to say.
Yeah, I guess so.
He's also an amateur. You know what I mean? It's
I do know what you mean, but I don't know if this is the other problem I run into regularly is people want a clear-cut answer, and a lot of it is, sure, that's legal, but you're going to jail. And that's the one you just described in all likelihood.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so...
Do you think that the courts only convict guilty people?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Bob Nersesian, thank you very much. We are going to do some commercials, and there's a good chance that we are going to have a few minutes at the end to ask you another question, if Richard can think of one. So, Richard, what did we learn tonight?
Boy, I don't know. Let me throw that back to you. I'm spinning here.
I'm not planning to use a wheelchair in casinos in the near future.
I'm not planning to announce the name of somebody that ripped me off.
Well, I definitely am planning to do that. If I don't get these payments, I have a sufficient electronic paper trail that I will get it. And I did not call him a cheat. I said untrustworthy, and I'm pretty sure I can back that up anywhere. All right. South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. That's more than anybody else. Every Monday in July, the South Point is offering double points on video poker and point multipliers on slots as well. There are no limits and no machines are excluded. All month long, the casino is holding a $600,000 Money Madness promotion. A progressive begins at $10,000 and must hit by $25,000. All players in the casino actively playing with a slot card in place are eligible to win. If you're playing when the jackpot hits and you're not the one who hits it, you receive $20 in free slot play. Then the progressive starts all over again at $10,000 and it goes up until it's hit. Also, every day at 10 a.m., a $1,000 progressive begins and must be hit by $2,500. So if you're playing in the casino after 10 a.m., you're eligible for both progressives. If you're playing on Mondays, you're also getting double points while you're having both progressives. And if you're on Thursdays from 10 a.m. through 4 p.m., they have a $5,200 seniors slot tournament. It's free. At the Palms, there are drawings at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday nights with a theme this month of $100,000 fun in the sun. The first 5 winners each night collect between $800 and $7,000, depending on which game piece they select. They have equal chances. And winners 6 through 10, they get $250 and they're done. On Fridays and Saturdays between 8 p.m. and midnight, you receive 5 times drawing tickets for the drawings coming up. The PEWs, Play, Earn, and Win, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for the first half of the month, have a theme of home products like paper towels, Tide detergents, and the top 2 gifts are a 32-inch television and a Sonic Care toothbrush system. I actually have been trying the Sonic Care system, and it tickles at first, but then I think it's pretty good. I think that's a pretty good product. You may redeem your points earned Monday as late as Friday. Now, the first half of the month ends this coming Monday, and if you don't like those prizes, the Wednesday and Friday, they have a different list that will have a theme of kick back and relax. And top prizes are a Kindle Fire, a lamp, rocking chair, sunglasses, and a few lesser prizes. On Video Poker for Winners, they have daily free contests where you can try your skill and luck. Today until midnight is 50 play draw poker. Tomorrow, extra action poker. Saturday, good times pay. And Sunday is deal draw poker. If any of these game titles are unfamiliar to you, playing in a daily free contest is a good way to get to know them better, free of charge. Every month, usually starting on the 24th, there is a week-long contest with a $500 first prize. All right. Our guest next week is probably going to be Kent Goulding. What do we know about that, Richard?
Well, Kent Goulding is a former backgammon player who, for 30 years, he was a backgammon player. He wrote some books. He has some very interesting stories about running the book in Monte Carlo for the backgammon tournaments. But starting in 1985, he started playing slot machines and then video poker. So he's been doing that on the East Coast for almost 30 years. And plus now he's at the World Series of Poker playing poker. So he's an all-around professional gambler, should be a very interesting guy.
All right. So even if he's makes the final 9 by next Thursday, he'll be through with the World Series of Poker. So good.
Yeah.
All right. Now you have a story about a wheelchair, Richard.
Actually, I wanted to ask Bob one more question about Atlantic City.
Good.
You had told us about that case about a player who made like a $7,000 bet, and he was dealt an ace, and then the boss said, no, take it away. He's got no bet. Has anything happened on that case?
I don't know where we left it off. The district court threw it out, as you might recall, and we appealed to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, and they have reversed, and we're now back in the district court, and I expect that we will go through the discovery process and trial or reach a settlement. And that's where that's at. It was particularly egregious from what I understand, or from at least what I'm pleading at this point from what my client explained to me. And the pleadings indicate that they just up and stole an ace, and then when he complained, they beat him up. So
that doesn't sound friendly to me.
I don't understand how it got thrown out at the first level, but it did, and that's why Court of Appeals exists, and kudos to the Court of Appeals for recognizing that assault and battery is a tort.
Boy, these things sure take a long time, because that's been how many years since that incident happened?
Some take a long time. Some settle before I even file a lawsuit. So, and some go all the way to the end, and we lose. It's a very curious mix. I don't like to admit that I lose, but it's the same way that people who gamble legally sometimes find themselves in jail.
Sure.
So I'd love to fix that all up, but and I work hard at it, but nobody's perfect, and nor am I.
What about your Supreme Court case?
The United States Supreme Court case, the one Walden versus Fiore. We're working on the briefs, and that is going up. We probably won't hear anything until the spring. I have noticed an uptick for all of you out there of seizures. The mere fact that it's going on certainly hasn't curtailed it at all. If you're found with a lot of money, whoever finds you with a lot of money, if they have a badge, are going to assume that you got that money illegally.
Yeah.
It's a terrible, terrible situation.
Richard, we got a minute and a half. You have a great wheelchair story. Take us out with your wheelchair story.
Okay, so this must be 30 years ago. Two players went into Caesar's Palace, one in a wheelchair, to
we now
play a
have
whole card
1
game.
minute.
And they started playing, and unbeknownst to them, down the pit, a guy had had a heart attack and was on the floor, and the guy in the wheelchair just sees a pit boss pointing over in his direction, calling other bosses, calling security. He sees all security running, and he jumps up out of the wheelchair and runs right out the door. And the BP looks at the dealer, looks at the wheelchair, and says, "Praise Jesus, it's a miracle."
Oh, well, what can you do? I assume that wheelchair guy did not come back into the casino that day.
No, he lost whatever the cost of the wheelchair was.
Thanks for having me again, guys.
We appreciated having you here. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Richard. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
You've been listening to Gambling with an Edge with your hosts Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin. Subscribe to the show in iTunes, and episodes will be delivered to you automatically every week. Archived versions of past shows may be found at bobdancer.com and richardmunchkin.com. We welcome emails at gamblingwithanedge@gmail.com. Bob Dancer and Richard Munchkin are both available on Facebook and welcome your questions. The sponsors for the show are the South Point Hotel, Casino and Spa, the M Resort, the Palms Casino Resort, and the website videopoker.com. Join us again next week for another Gambling with an Edge.